So I want to start by welcoming you all to our professional development workshop for early career faculty. We are really excited as a new Affinity group to be hosting this event. And we're really thankful that Chris Haas and Irene Davis graciously volunteered to provide some introductory remarks. And that when we put out a call to the ASB fellows and other senior biomechanists looking for help, you answered. And that's one of the fabulous things about the American Society of Biomechanics. I also want to take this opportunity to thank Jessica Allen. You're not going to hear a lot from her during this introduction, but she has done the lion's share of the work to communicate with the ASB program chairs. She is currently assigning all of the breakout rooms, so she deserves our thanks for all the work she did to put this session together. To start, we wanted to take this opportunity to tell everybody a little bit about the ASB Early Career Faculty Initiative and our Affinity group, because a lot of people haven't heard of us. We're very new. And we're new in terms of our publicity, but we actually started having this conversation back at ASB in 2018. A group of us were all new junior faculty members, and we were standing around at the banquet, and we made the realization that it was really nice to be talking to our peers. It was really nice to have people that we could talk to about how amazing this cool faculty job was, while also being able to admit how terrifying it can be at times. And we found a lot of comfort in being able to talk to each other. And we said, you know, we have all this technology. We could talk, you know, at the other parts of the year that were not physically at ASB. So we formed a Slack channel. And for all of the early career faculty members that have access to that Slack channel, you can still scroll back and you can see that in 2018, we probably talked like 4 or 5 times on that channel. And before ASB last year, I actually sent out a message and was like, is this a failed experiment? Should I close this Slack channel? And the overwhelming answer was, no, this is important. We want to do it, but we need to figure out how to actually do it well. So a group of us got together and we actually put together kind of a formal plan. And these are the areas that we're working on. We have peer writing groups so that you can get the early feedback on your grant ideas before you go and talk to those senior people at your university. Maybe you want to share your ideas with friendlier faces, but we're putting together a seminar speaker list so that we can encourage people to invite us for seminars. We've been making recommendations to the ASB leadership about awards. We're running this conference event and we are planning on running conference events in the future if the program chairs will have us. And we're also working on putting together some sort of mentoring program in order to facilitate communication across the faculty ranks. So that's our short plug to tell you that we are active and really excited to kind of interact with all of the early career faculty in ASB, as well as all of the senior members of ASB that want to help us. The kind of what is going to happen today is I'm going to turn it over to Chris and Irene in order to talk a little bit about kind of strategic career planning. They have the job of, they've been given 10 minutes to tell us everything we need to know in order to be successful and happy faculty. Then we're going to break into breakout rooms. If you're new to the breakout room world, don't worry. All you have to do on your end is hit a join button. And the first session is going to be really a debrief of having a conversation about the things that you hear about career planning. We'll then come back into this main room for a couple more announcements. And then we are going to split into a second breakout room, which is going to kind of, I call it mentee choice in air quotes, because if you are a mentee that filled out the survey, you are going to end up in a topically themed room based on the survey. If you did not fill out the pre-session survey, you have been randomly assigned by the breakout randomizer. So our expectation is that those topics will give you a starting place for a conversation, but it will really be open discussion with everybody. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris and Irene.
So welcome everybody. I believe I'm going first, and this is a daunting task. One, to speak to you all, to do it in 5 minutes, and because I'm full of it, and I mean advice. I'm full of advice, and so we'll do our best, or do my best to share some wisdom. just want to acknowledge that, wisdom shared is usually based upon experience. And in my experience as a white male in science is likely different than some of you. And so I want to recognize that some of the advice that I give may be more meaningful or less meaningful based upon the lived experience that you're going through. And certainly in a conversational setting, I'd be happy to try to weave the conversations through those lenses more appropriately. But I'll give it a shot at this level. So I don't have control of the slide. There we go. So I have three main points to really kind of discuss. And my first one is, you're sitting there as junior faculty, and you have this this destination ahead of you, or in your mind, you have this destination ahead of you of promotion and tenure and happiness. And I just really want you to kind of change the lens by which you view your day-to-day operations. You really should consider the tenure and promotion space as more of something that will just naturally happen along your journey instead of a goal or an external validation of who you are as a scholar or who you are as an individual. Instead of focusing on tenure and promotion, I really would encourage you to focus on being the best version of yourself. Look in the mirror. You need to be able to look in the mirror when you go up for promotion and tenure and be able to be proud of what you did. And so if you can look at yourself in the mirror on a daily basis and be proud of the research that you're doing, the scholarship that you're doing, and the mentoring and service that you're doing, that'll be enough. And whether you get tenure at your current university or not, it won't matter, because you're going to be so good at what you do, you would have made a difference in the world, and you'll have many opportunities placed in front of you. There's also, just to remind you, there's an arrival fallacy. And the arrival fallacy is that you find happiness once you get to that destination, right? So once I get promotion or tenure, then I'm going to have this long and happy career. And if you think back to when you defended your dissertation, it was a bit anticlimactic, right? And so I can let you know that when you get promotion and tenure and promoted again, or when you get your first R01, you're not going to be any happier then than you are today. And so you're in charge of your happiness. You're in charge of the journey, and to focus on the journey. Now, I'm not saying to ignore the game, right? I'm not saying to ignore the external markers of validation. I'm just saying be strategic about it. You control your own destiny, and you control how you play the game. And I think Irene will share with you some strategies for doing that effectively. Another piece of advice is you need to be a lifelong learner as a junior faculty member, and then as you move into a senior faculty member. It's not done. You were trained to be a great scholar, you were trained to be a great scientist, but there's a lot that goes into being a great faculty member. And if you look at this competency wheel that I have on the slide here, this is our leadership competency program, or leadership competency that we use at UF to build our developmental programs. And every piece of that pie is a skill that you need and to be the best version of yourself, and a skill that you will need to be quickly and effective in the jobs that you have. So take advantage of the opportunities available to you. Develop yourself at all times. Every day you should be growing in what you're doing. So utilize the peer networks. The opportunity that you've created, that Jen and the rest of you have created, is wonderful. I would have loved to have a nationwide peer network of supporters, of confidants, of accountability partners. All of your universities have professional development programs. Don't wait until you think you're ready to take leadership training. Start from day one. My first leadership development program that I took as a faculty member was in year 6, just after getting tenure. And the stuff that I learned in that would have been so useful in year 1 and 2 of being a faculty member. Take advantage of ASB. There's professional development happening at every conference, so take advantage of that. Take advantage of national programs. The HERS Institute is a wonderful leadership program, specifically targeting women scholars and to help them to become leaders in higher ed, and we all know that we need more of that. Another one is most universities that you're at will have a institutional membership to the National Council for Faculty Development and Diversity. And there's writing programs and individual development programs that are happening each and every day and each and every month within those. So take advantage of the national programs that are out there. And then my last piece of advice, I think is my last piece of advice, is, and I bring this one up because I had a student who I love dearly, and she was instructed at some point in her development to fake it until she makes it. And to me, that is just incredibly bad advice. You can't fake it in science, right? And so you have to do the hard work to make it. And so I really want you to think about challenging yourself, trying hard things, difficult things, doing the hard work. I mean, work is beautiful, right? There's something, when you go into the lab and you write code, and we've all done this, when we spend hours and hours writing code, and that work is something you're proud of, and it leads to something very fruitful. Don't be afraid to fail. You're smart enough and talented enough to build wings on the way down. So jump off that ledge of uncertainty and trust that you have the skills and the abilities to solve the problem, even if you weren't prepared in your own mind to address that problem. So I'll hand it over to Irene, who's certainly more eloquent and a better sage advice giver than I am.
Oh, I think that was awesome advice, Chris. And I think, if I had to encapsulate it into one topic or one statement, it is to be true to yourself. I think that's really important. The first thing I want to say before I get started is I'm just so amazed at this group. I used to think, man, why wasn't this around when we were younger? But really it's around because you guys made it around. So really, why didn't we do this when we were younger? You guys are just a lot smarter than us, and I think that's great. I'm going to touch on strategy to promotion. So you do have to be true to yourself, but there are certain things that you need to be able to do to be promoted. And I'm going to give a nod like this when I'm ready to be animated. So go ahead. So the keys to promotion is that you need to be the go-to person in something, right? And I just put a few things down here. It might be sports biomechanics, it might be bone stress injuries, but you want to be known for something. And next animation. And you want to be known when you're coming up for promotion at the regional, beginning national level as an associate professor, or at the national, international level as a full professor. And this is really important. So the first thing that you need to ask yourself, and these questions that we have in blue are going to be questions that at least can get you started off in your breakout rooms. What do you want to be known for? Next slide. So how do you get there? How do you get to be from a novice to an expert? Go ahead. And I think focus is really important. I spend a lot of time, I am the director of faculty promotions in my department at Harvard. And I have people who have CVs that really have interests all over the place. And they're like awesome people, but they haven't focused, and it makes it difficult because they haven't gotten into any depth in any one area. So focus, you can say follow one course until successful. It is important that you have some level of focus as you go forward. Next slide. So how do you do that? Well, the first thing is you have to determine what you're passionate about. And I love Jill's, love what you do what you love, and do it well. And it's really, you do need to understand what you have to have something you're passionate about, because you have to have enough enthusiasm. It's going to last you your entire career. And most of us who are in this, who are older, we're still really passionate about the things that we started out with. It may have changed, may have taken a little bit of a direction, but it's really an important key to it. Next. You also have to dedicate as many of your professional research activities to this topic. So say yes to opportunities for sure, but you've got to be strategic and pick and choose them wisely, as your time is limited. Next. We all have a balance here between our career, our family, and ourself, right? We need to take care of ourselves. That's usually the first thing that goes. If it's one thing, it's like your workout or whatever. But you can't let any one of those go too long. So it's really important that when you're making these decisions about activities to get involved in with your career, that hopefully it's moving you towards your focus. Next. So one of the things that I try to tell people is that you don't get promoted on being good at many things, but not at a very deep level. You get promoted at being excellent at one or two. Next. So in terms of scientific focus, in terms of scholarship, some of the things that I think have really high impact, obviously original research, systematic reviews, consensus statements, these actually demonstrate that you're being recognized in your area. Next. As an assistant professor, you're expected to have mostly first author papers. As an associate, they expect you to have a mixed first and senior because now you're starting to mentor people yourself. And then as a full professor, you have mostly senior author papers. So just think about that because I've had people who didn't really pay attention to where they were in the authorship list and said to me, you know, I really was the senior author on this, or I really was the first author. So really pay attention to that because it will matter. In terms of funding progression, you start out with institutional grants, work up to foundational grants like American Heart, then maybe smaller external grants, and then on to R01 level grants. So that's kind of the progression in terms of funding. Reviewers, when they're looking at your dossier for promotion, they focus most on your productivity since your last promotion. So make sure that you keep your trajectory going. Next. In terms of recognition, this can take on many forms. And these are awards, invited talks, invitations to consensus groups, etc. And there are ways, there are strategic ways, and just your slide in the beginning, the affinity group, and how you're actually setting up speaker lists. That's awesome that you can help invite each other. That's really awesome. So I want you to think about how can you advocate for this recognition in other ways. And this is my last slide. So the guiding principles in my lab has always been the 5 Ps. You have to have a noble purpose. You have to have passion. You have to have persistence. And this is something Chris talked about. If you fail, you got to get back up and you got to do it again. We learn from our failures. And then you have to have patience, which is probably my hardest one, and then take pride in your work. Next. So 3 things, you've got to be true to yourself, be resilient, and be strategic. Next. So how do you accomplish all of those things? And that's what we would like you to talk about in your breakouts. Thank you.
Jen, you're muted. Jen, you're unmuted, or you're muted.
I'm muted.
Yeah.
So with that, we're gonna change into our breakout rooms. And really the goal of this first discussion is you have been divided based on whether you are from primarily a teaching focused or a research focused institution. And the goal is to have a debrief and talk about how can you be strategic at those institutions in order to achieve success. Our breakout rooms vary in size, but realize you only have 20 minutes. So keep your introductions brief so that you can focus on conversation, but still do introduce yourself so that you know who is there. There's a raise hand feature. If you need help, you can also send an emissary back to the main room. Both Jessica and I will be available there to provide assistance. And also just some friendly reminders on good discussion. Make sure you allow each other to speak, be respectful. Realize that people are often vulnerable in these discussions and to respect that vulnerability in order to kind of have a successful and useful discussion. So with that, I'm going to hope that Jessica's ready to hit the magic button, and you should get a button pop up on your screen that will say join breakout room.
And before I do that, I am ready, but as all things go, technology messed up. And so I was not able to preload the breakout room session. So just so you know, rooms number 12 and 13 are teaching faculty. So if you are in a different room and you would be preferred to move to rooms 12 and 13, hop out and I will put you there. But I think I did everything correctly, but just in case. But I'm going to open all rooms now.